Greetings, my beautiful IP Resilience friends and the Top Talk with Ilona show. I'm going to invite you today to listen to us and stay to the end because we have a special guest. His name is Dr. Sam, and he's the author of the Sensitive Preaching to the Sexually Hurting. And he's calling us today from California. And I want to introduce you this special guest, and we're going to start from there. How are you today, Dr. Sam?
Thanks. Great. Having a great time in California. Thanks.
That's awesome. So please tell us what prompted you to write the book. And it's such a sensitive subject, especially you're challenging and people at the churches. So and you're preaching about that. So what is missing? Why did you write the book?
I became a pro-life speaker many years ago. And as I did, my messages were primarily don't do it, more guilt and gore and God put together. So my messages were, just pretty much showing how abortions were performed. And, I would have ladies feeling pretty guilty, like a typical preacher, just doing the guilt thing. And ladies would come up to me afterwards, Alona, and say, hey, I've already done this. I've already done this. Is there any hope or forgiveness or healing or transformation? I mean, what do I do now? And I didn't know what to say. I knew the truth, but didn't have grace. And Jesus was full of truth and grace. We have to have both. So I then went back to my message and made it better so that I included truth and grace, and to assume that, of course, you've already done this. Some of you have already done this. So as I did that and my messages got better, I would then have ladies come up to me afterwards with stories of being raped and molested and having husbands into pornography and same-sex attraction and all sorts of other topics that I didn't sign up for. I just wanted to know about one topic. So as a result of my initial interest in being a pro-life speaker about one topic of abortion, I ended up hearing stories of horrific stories. And I thought to myself, my goodness, the church doesn't know what to do to say to these people. And I would ask these ladies afterwards, do you ever go to your pastor or your priest about this? And they said, I would never, ever in a million years tell my pastor or priest about stuff that I'm telling you. So I thought, my goodness, there needs to be a book to help pastors and counselors and everyday conversations to know that, God's the best person to heal people's hearts. In Ephesians, he says he's abundantly able to do abundantly above all that we ever could ask or imagine, so that he can heal any hurt. He can change any habit, and that includes the sexual ones, the ones that are, we tend to think are reserved for the world. No, God's the best healer. God's the best changer and transformer. So that's why I wrote the book, to equip pastors and ministry leaders and the everyday person to say, I know how God can heal you. I know he knows how you feel, and he's the best chance of healing in this lifetime. And there's 7 different topics of rape and molestation and sexless marriage and pornography, LGBTQ and casual sex hooking up lifestyle, and pornography. So I deal with 7 topics, all 7 of them, from a Christian perspective of how to help these people, either publicly from a message or privately in conversation. And it won the award for the best ministry book of the year. So I was excited about that.
This is very powerful, and it's such a very sensitive and very fragile subject right now, just like a politics, right? We don't talk about it. We are very segregating about that. So especially the churches, yes, the churches really do not know how to deal with that. So we're trying to either sugarcoat it, we're either trying to ignore it and avoid the subject matter just to because we really don't know how to handle that. It's a very personal subject to the people, and we want to be sympathetic and empathetic, but at the same time we really don't have a tools. We do know how to preach about the sin, right? Repentance. We know about how to preach about prayer life. We know how to preach about transformation life, but to this subject matter not. So what do you want to tell right now to the pastors? How would you want to encourage them to find the tools, and where would they go?
The first thing I do tell pastors and ministry leaders is that it's not about controversy, it's about ministry. It's not about an issue, it's about individuals. There are people in your church who had abortions. men who wrongly decided and feel guilty, ladies, there are people in your church who were raped, date raped, or molested, whose partner struggles with. There are people. So it's never about talking about an issue. No, it's about healing people's hearts, not scratching people's ears. So when you have in your heart the motive to minister, to heal, to help people who are hurting, instead of doing a talk about a certain issue just to make yourself look good or just whatever the reason is. So first and foremost, it's about ministry to people. And secondly, God talks about all these things in the Bible. One of the chapters in the book I wrote is called The Birds and the Bees and the Bible, because God talks about a rape. He talks about being sexually abused and molested. He talks about, there's nothing he doesn't talk about, nothing. So he's not embarrassed to talk about it. So why should we?
I like that. If he's not embarrassed to talk about it, why should we? Where do they initiate to start the conversation at the churches with this subject? I know they cannot go to every person and say, "Hey, have you been molested? Hey, have you been, raped?" So how would they sensitively start this conversation without making everybody else feel awkward or embarrassed?
Well, I tell to talk about emotions, not the action, but emotion when people are angry. And preachers give lots of reasons why people are angry, in life, but they never include maybe the reasons that you're angry because your husband doesn't want to be with you at nighttime. Maybe you're angry at your father for what he did to you. Maybe you're angry that this person made you horrible. Just to include sexual topics or issues or hurts as part of any emotion, anger, bitterness, fear, so it's always about the emotion and healing the person's. So when you do talk about these emotions, which we do all the time in our messages, you include examples of people who've been sexually or emotionally devastated or violated. You get in, you say it among a list of other topics of why people would be fearful or angry or hurt or bitter. And you include these topics so that the person who's listening will say, oh my goodness, maybe I could go talk to him or her. They would understand. Look what they just said. Maybe they wouldn't yell at me because they seem to have sensitivity here. So when you start that way and you just include these emotions as part of everyday life, even in the sexual realm as well, it's an easy way to segue in.
And this world is so polluted with the visual images. Everywhere you go, any social media is very, very, saturated with so much images, like nude people, have nude dancing, all of that. So how do men, right, will prevent themselves from falling into the traps of pornography?
Well, first, the Bible talks a lot about our eyes being the source of temptation. So if anybody should not be surprised at the temptation and addiction of pornography, it's Christians. We should be the least surprised because God talks about it a whole lot. He gives stories of Samson and all throughout the Old and New Testament. So if anybody should not be surprised, but say, oh, I'll get that. It's not the unpardonable sin. Of course, that's one other source of temptation, your eyes. The Bible talks about that a lot. So, there's a verse in the Bible that says, I made a covenant with the Lord and with my eyes that I would not sin against you. So, well, you know what? May I be perfectly frank? I'll give you what I think is the best. There's a verse in Proverbs 5:19 that says, let the breast of your wife captivate you and intoxicate you at all times. Yeah, God said that. May her breast captivate you, intoxicate you at all times. So I did a message on pornography to our church group once of 80-year-old men and 18-year-old men. And I was a little nervous on how to, balance the message for all of them. And that's how I started my message, saying that, there's a verse in the Bible where God says, I want just her. So I tell men, look, you're only supposed to look at one woman and her body. And that's supposed to captivate you, intoxicate you, and just blow you away that you're mesmerized. Captivated is the Hebrew word. It's a fascinating word. So I like that verse. God wrote it. I like that. I'm going to stick by it. Let just hers, not everybody else's. Don't be tempted by others. You just fixate on one body, not many bodies in pornography. That's a simplistic way, but I like that verse, and I think it helps a lot of men.
This is very like a powerful. Yeah, I know it's a subject that not everybody's comfortable talking about. Not everybody's comfortable preaching about. You don't hear about that. It is very sensitive subject, very much so, and it just brings out like the worst from you, right? All of the memories, all of these the feelings, and the maybe guilt issues as well. So I wanted to ask you if you can just talk to our audience and depart some wisdom, right? Take like a few minutes and tell them if they are experiencing any of the 7 issues that you have mentioned in the books, what would be their solution if they want to seek one?
I've seen hundreds and hundreds of people transformed and healed, people who have been molested or raped, who were involved in same-sex attraction, who were addicted to pornography, who had a sexless marriage, who were involved in a lot of fornication and promiscuity, who had abortion. And no matter what the hurt is, no matter how deep it goes, no matter how dark it is, and you feel like nobody else can know that. Well, God already knows. He's not surprised. And he's the one person who made you, who knows how you feel. If there's violation or a feeling of betrayal or humiliation, Jesus went through all that. All of these feelings that you feel as a result of what's been done to you was done to Jesus. Yeah, he was humiliated and stripped of his clothes. He was betrayed by his best friends. I could go on. So realizing that God understands it and knows it and he lived it is huge, to know that you're not alone. And then number two, I speak with a lot of people who have memories of past things that have been done by them or to them. Well, could you include one thing in your memory of what Jesus did for you? Instead, so I sensitively try to help ladies and men to see that no matter what's been done to you, look at also what's been done for you. And that's the cross of Jesus. So if you want to have your identity not shaped by by an experience in the past, if you got to pick an experience in the past to identify you, pick the cross of Christ. That's where you get your identity. That's where you get your self. Don't let someone who did something bad to you be that which defines you. Look at the God of the universe who died for you. That's where you get your identity from. That's where you get your strength from. So it's ultimately a choice in your mind of what are you going to think about? What are you going to think about? Who, what? And if you think about the fact of what God has done for you instead of what someone else had done to you or with you or in you, it's huge.
Thank you so much for sharing this information. I know it's not hard, but you put so much time and invested so much of your even money to investigate this subject, to talk about this subject, to finally give the tool to the pastors to help the people at the churches to speak about this subject, to talk about that. And I also want to let people know, if you do want to follow Dr. Sam, his information is going to be on the description, and you can find him, connect with him, hire him, and speak to him about this subject. If you're the pastor, please do call him and follow him. If you have any questions, I'm sure he will be more than happy to answer and lead you to the right passage. We want to thank you today, Dr. Sam, for writing the book, for being so courageous, for being so bold, for being so much in God's side to speak about the subject that is so sensitive to most people to even talk about that. We want to wish you all the best.
Well, thank you very much. It's been such a joy. My phrase is, the world knows the problem, but not the solution. The church knows the solution, but not the problem. Hopefully my book and website will help change that. Thank you.